Hi, and welcome to today's SME Business Podcast. Your host, Mark, will be joining you to interview a founder of an SME business each week, highlighting lessons learned and revealing insights. Listen and learn each week on how to get and stay ahead.
Hi, dear listeners. Thank you for tuning in for the next episode of the SME Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Kate Grayson from Beyond Money. Kate is a money coach, and her company helps people get in control of their money. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, it was like I was like, okay, the money is a prevalent issue, very important, especially now in this pandemic, without
Yes.
going back to effing COVID and all the buzzwords, if you will. Um, so I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is something that can help so many listeners. So I was like, oh yeah, you should be on the podcast. So just to give listeners a bit more of ideas. Can you tell me a bit more about yourself and how you got into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, definitely. So I got into it really out of personal need more than anything. Several years ago, I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, and I had to really abruptly leave my job and career. And so I went from earning a nice, comfortable salary to suddenly being an unemployed, full time medical patient. And I really began to experience firsthand the degree to which financial stress, just not having your money in order, can really affect every aspect of your well being. And I saw that first, the financial service industry just really isn't made to help us in these situations with just our day to day money needs. And second of all, almost all of my friends and family were also struggling with money stress. It's just that we're usually so quiet and closed about it that we all think we're alone. So anyways, I set to work on, changing it all around for myself, and then knew I needed to share it with the world. So that's how I got into entrepreneurship and started my company.
Very cool. I forgot to unmute myself, but that's what
Oh,
editing is for.
yeah.
Yeah, no, like it's interesting, like like money is like like a taboo, if you will. People don't want to talk about it, but I think this is like almost like the weird positive bit is that the can of worms is open, if you will,
hmm
because people are now like like they know more people that are stressed out, if you will.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, but people are more open and go like, oh, how can I do things better? That kind of thing.
definitely. I totally agree.
And
That's been a great, plus side of this whole situation.
yes, yeah, yes. So I was wondering as well. So how did you get into money coaching?
Yeah, so I really got into it first to fix my own finances around, to realign, my financial priorities with my new, health needs and all of that. And then really it just started to happen. I started helping friends with their money more, just, as a friend, not being paid for it or anything. And then I just realized that it's really all I wanted to do for my work. It's a marriage of all of my interests and skills and all of that. So it's one of those things that wasn't planned, it just sort of continued happening, and I really fell in love with it.
Yeah, and then I think that's most important bit. Like it's one of those things where if you do what you love, then you never work a day in your life. Yes, there might be long days, but if it's something that you love, then if it's not a I don't know. It's not a career anymore. It's just a yeah, a labor of love, if you will.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah, it's such a joy to be able to do what you love all day.
yeah, yeah. So that was like a thinking as well. Like so, if you like I know how you got into it, but if you basically talking, you found you were speaking to somebody in the street and they go like like what is money coaching? How would you explain it to them?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's not something that we are used to. We all know about your investment managers who will, grow your stock portfolio and all of these things. But really what money coaching is helping you figure out where you are at financially right now, and not where you think you're at, but where things actually stand, because there's usually a wide gap between the two. And so figuring out where things stand right now and then where you want to go in your life. So it's never about me as the, money person saying, I think you need XYZ amount of money. It's about what do you want out of your life in the short and long term, and how can we build you a financial plan and habits around money and a budget that will get you from where you are to where you want to be.
Yes, yeah, and having a plan, and then it's easier to follow well instead of just like trying to figure it out yourself and be like, okay, where should I go, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Now we're all have our own expertise, and uh, money itself, budget, doing your household budget, if you will, it's a expertise in itself that a lot of us probably should be better at.
Yeah, it's scary though, which is why money is scary, which is why we all tend to ignore it a lot.
Yes, exactly. So I was wondering as well. So everybody, the rich and famous, people go like, oh, they get financial advisors, but how are you different from a financial advisor?
Yeah, so fundamentally, I'm bringing the same custom planning that has always been available to the wealthy. I'm bringing it to everybody. So before, you would have to have a lot of money in order for a financial advisor to spend, the level of time and attention to really understand your budget, your spending, your priorities, your goals, all of that. And I'm bringing that to everybody because I think that everybody deserves custom financial planning, not just the uber wealthy.
Yes, basically financial planning for the 99%.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was wondering as well, what kind of money problems do customers come to you with?
I would say that the biggest overall problem is just really not understanding what all of the money is supposed to be doing for you every month. So everybody's specific problems look different. Some people have a lot of debt, some people spend too much, some people, everybody's issues around it are different, but fundamentally the problem that I see is that we are not used to thinking of money as working for us. We're not used to thinking of it as a tool to access the lifestyle or the life that we want. And so once I'm able to reframe that with clients and get them towards thinking of money as a powerful, neutral tool to access their dreams, then that changes things around a lot for people.
Yeah, instead of like a necessary evil, position it as a something that can get you where you want to go. Yeah. Um, of course, it is what it is, as in where we are. But why do you think that it is so important to talk about money?
Yeah, I think it's important because money is really the driving force of our lives and our world. We don't often want to think about it that way because that can feel, bad to focus so much on money. But fundamentally, it's money that lets us, visit our family. It's money that lets us go on, vacations and experiences. It's money that lets us educate our children well. Like money provides us all of these wonderful things in life. And I think it's important that we stop running from money, that we start letting it be a useful force in our lives, and that we let go of some of the fear and the stigma around it. And then we'll also realize that we're not alone. A lot of my clients think they're the singular worst person that's ever existed with money. They think I've never seen somebody whose bank account is so bad or whose budget is so bad. But really, that's never true. It's just that since we don't talk about it, we all think we're alone, when really we're all in it together.
I was gonna say it's one of those things where I think this whole crisis highlighted where um, where people were hiding stuff, if you will. Um, and then yeah, like it kind of comes out where they go like, okay, I need to do something. Um, but it also, helps them reframe where they're going and go like, okay, can I create a new situation that's less stressful, and then so I can get in control of things and then I can start rebuilding. Because
Yes,
I think
completely.
there's a lot of yeah,
Yeah, I think if
I
there's
think
one
there's like a
thing.
lot of people that will be like, okay, 2000. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that if there's one thing I've learned is that people's financial stress or financial struggles, as I think we've seen during the pandemic, are not at all related to income. I have clients on, extremely high, good incomes that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, and I have clients that earn what most of us would consider a low, modest income, and they're doing
Yes.
great. So it's not. It's financial stress is not correlated to income or assets or anything. It's all about how you choose to confront it and if you choose to be in control of it. And I think you're right that we've seen um, a lot more people come out with their struggles during this time that we might have before the pandemic thought, had perfect lives.
Yes, yes. And I think that was like one of the things, for instance, the UK was like was getting publicized was that a lot of middle class folks were like all of a sudden showing up at food banks, um, because they end up with a situation, for instance, that they ended up with like 10% of their previous income, and then yeah, of course, we end up in a situation where that's not sustainable. So you end up literally having to go food bank because um, yeah, you have no money left because what you're getting, if you're getting 10%, for instance, that's doesn't even cover, I don't know, 25% of your mortgage or whatever.
Right,
Um,
right.
so yeah, it's like exposing in a way is also like the cost of living, which is then yeah detrimental. I remember in the old days, people would be like, oh yeah, like was it like 25% of your income should your rent or mortgage or whatever should be 25% max of your income.
Right. And now that's not
And
possible for many, many people.
no, and that's like like I see it myself with like I would like to pay less, if you will,
Right.
but the market is such that's not an option. Um, because yeah, it's one of those things where that the prices are such, and I think that there's also some government responsibility there that they
Yes.
have to put some brakes on because um, they if they say at one point like spend 25% of your income on mortgage or rent or whatever it is, but that that the average person is spending like I don't know, let's say 50% or whatever, um, then you as a government you need to do something because um, just like looking currently, if it was a question that instead of 50% people were spending 25% of their income, then guess what? That their gap that they have to bridge is much smaller.
Right.
But now it's like, this is the funny part. I don't know how it was over there, but here actually the prices were booming, which is like really weird.
They're booming right
Um,
now during the
you go like,
pandemic.
yes,
Oh,
and but now of course you see some prices starting to drop.
okay.
But to be fair, I think that was like the same in like 2008, um, where the prices were high and then literally like it crashed, that kind of thing.
Oh gosh,
Um,
it's so tough. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah. And then like and this is my personal gripe with this, is that like the whole home itself, should never been about the investment object.
exactly. Yes.
As in, I get it, like you wanna like pay down on the mortgage, then you pay off your mortgage, and then you don't have to pay for it. But the whole like landlord situation and such is just makes it all much more horrible, if you will. Because then the prices go up, and then it's like you end up like paying rent, and then you can't actually save for your deposit because you're paying so much rent.
Yeah, it is
Um,
just a vicious cycle. And I think that's
yeah, yeah,
why, custom financial coaching, financial planning can be so helpful for folks,
yes,
because when we hear this, the
yes,
traditional information online of, 25% of your income on housing, or you should be able to save for a down payment by the time you're 30 or something like that. We hear all of these things,
yes,
and
yes, yes,
and that just perpetuates the guilt and the shame that we have around money because we're not achieving those
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
And,
No, and then also, like, yeah, exactly. And then it's like, like for instance, if you're talking about university, um, like, earlier generations maybe went to university for free, or they paid like, I don't know, um, 500 per year.
right,
And now it's like, people get out and then they come up with like 100K in study loans.
exactly. Yeah. And here in
And then
America,
it's
I
like,
mean,
like such, yeah,
I was just going to say that here in America, our debt crisis is just so horrible. I mean, people are in, so much debt that there's really no chance of getting ahead the way that our parents and our grandparents' generations did.
yes, yes, because you end up in a situation where people supplement their income with credit. Um, and that system only works if you keep inflating credit, and then you end up in situations where, I read stories where people go like, like they have like 80, 90K of just credit card debt, and it's like, um, and that even for the UK where, there's also credit card debt, but those are like shocking numbers, if you will.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and it's a lot more
um,
common than any of us might think, which is why I think back to your earlier question of the importance of talking about money is that, then you know that you're not alone. If you have, 50 grand in credit card debt or something, you might think that you are the only person you know that has that because you and your friends aren't talking about money. But the relief that you feel when you realize that you're not alone, that other people are experiencing this too. It doesn't automatically eliminate the debt, but it certainly makes coping with it easier.
yeah, yeah, it's like it's like I think like one of the things why people should do money coaching is like they need to they need to see the end of the tunnel, if you will.
Yes.
um and then like you as a whole family have somewhere to work towards. um and I think this is where like the bounce back or the great reset, or some government conspiracies come in, but I think it does call for a reset, if you will, because yeah, if it has to be sustainable, then yeah, things need to change, because yeah, cost of living has gone up, but um, salaries haven't increased, so you end up in a situation where one doesn't match the other. Um, so yeah, it's interesting, and then of course the elections and such in America doesn't really help as well. So hopefully that starts calming down now. But yeah, stressful times.
Sure is. Sure is.
Um, I was wondering as well. So, what could governments around the world do better to help small businesses grow?
I think that they could make access to startup loans much more accessible for people. In America, over the last decade or so, I mean, really since 2008, the amount of money that the government is giving out in folks to startup loans has gone down exponentially. And this makes it really hard because it makes it that only if you already have money can you afford to start a business. And that's not right. The joy and the privilege of starting a business should not be reserved for people who have access to startup capital. So that would be my request of all of the governments around the world.
Yeah, that is good. It's cool that you bring it up as well because I brought it up in a different episode, but I said as well as like you probably know the statistic as well, but basically a lot of the large enterprises that um, were around before, a lot of them are no longer around, as in they grow big, and then at one point they grow so big that they kind of like they lose their way,
Mm-hmm.
and then those companies go away. So really, it is in the government's best interest to not, of course, only have things like Silicon Valley where it creates another app and another app, but actually create new companies
Yeah,
that then can be like listed on New York Stock Exchange and be the new General Electric, if you will.
definitely, because those have
Because
to
yeah,
start somewhere.
that's economic cycles, and that's how it works. What worked in the past doesn't work in the future. So it is in the government's interest and or all our interest really to have a continuous cycle, if you will, of new smaller companies growing big, um, because that means that taxes are being raised, and that also means that they generate employment. Because of course, not everybody wants to be entrepreneur. I know this is an entrepreneur podcast, but not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, of course, or can't be an entrepreneur for
Right.
various reasons. So yeah, it's very important, and um, yeah, it's kind of sad that yeah, governments are more, yeah, because of all the lobbying, more targeted towards large enterprise. Um, Hopefully they wake up. But again, this is why I hope people in government start, yeah, finding out about this podcast and then go like, hey, we get some policy ideas from this
Yes.
question.
Yes, that will be wonderful when that happens. So, any governments
Yes,
that are
exactly.
listening, take the ideas from this
Yes.
podcast.
Yes, exactly. I transcribe the podcast as well, so they don't even have to listen. They
Oh,
have
even
the
better.
blog post. I was
Amazing.
saying, think as well. If a budding entrepreneur would ask you for one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a great question. And to take it back to money, like I always do, my advice would be to save more money than you think you'll need when starting it. I think that entrepreneurs by nature are optimistic, success driven people, but in my experience, starting a business takes a lot longer than we usually think it will. It doesn't turn profitable as fast as our entrepreneur optimistic mind might hope. So, my advice is always to make sure you have more financial runway than you think you'll need. And this is especially true if you are in a single income household. If you have a spouse whose income you can rely on, then maybe it's a different calculation. But if you are single, if you have any dependents, definitely plan for more savings than you think you'll need.
A very good point, because of course, it's one of those things where if you assume that the government will be there for you, you can be caught out, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, it is very important. So, but yeah, you need to be wary of course things like cost of living. So one of the things I've seen people do go like they move not to suburbia because the prices would still be too high, but they go like, I'll take a job um, in a different state because they go like, well, maybe the salary is not as high, but because the cost of living is so much lower, I actually end up with more in my pocket. Um, but those are all, of course, yeah, decisions people need to take. Like, oh, does this make sense or not? Um, but yeah, money a big component. Then I had a question as well. The last question I had was like, if you had a magic wand, what would you want to make happen?
I think back to our earlier conversation, I would just like to wipe away everybody's debt and let people start clean because especially student loans and obviously in some countries like America and the UK, credit card debt has really created cycles for people that are tremendously hard to get out of. So I would like us to just all have one big reset and wipe everything away and all of us start fresh.
Yeah, it's good you bring it up. I think it like official term. Well, actually in the UK it's like a debt jubilee.
I like
Um,
that.
I don't know if that I don't know if it's actual. I think it happened only once, but I'm not entirely sure. There's a lot of people, of course, that do have the money that don't like that option.
Sure.
But if you just look at, even if it's a question like looking at like where we are, there's no gold standard anyway. Let's be honest, most money is printed. Um, so it's one of those things where is all that debt serviceable, or is it better to just say, hey, you know what, we're literally gonna go to the computer and basically almost like Back to the Future, if you will.
Right.
Press be like reset, like we'll go back to where it was point X, and then bounce back that way.
Yeah, and
Because I
obviously,
think one of the
it
things is that, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that obviously it's more complicated than I'm making it, and we would obviously have to figure out what can be done so that these situations don't repeat themselves. I mean, it's not very useful to wipe away all student debt if we're not going to make university more affordable moving forward, for example. So obviously, yeah, more complex than I'm saying, but if I had a magic wand, that is what I would do.
Yes, and I think it's also like you said, the universities changing the pricing is one thing. Um, but I think like one of the main things I think is like I mentioned the cost of living, where it just needs to be more manageable. Yes, I know not everything was great in 70s, 80s, and there was like lots of destitution as well. And don't get me wrong, not everything was great. Um, but yeah, you had a situation where people were able to live based on one income, and they were able to buy a house, um, and doing jobs that didn't really require much education, if you will. And yet you still could buy a house. And now it's like it's pricing a lot of people out, and it's like, yes, you can work in the city if you will, but you can never live in the city, and that I don't think as a society it should be something we strive for, because for cohesion purposes, if you will, yeah, everybody should get a chance. But that also means that general governments around the world, um, like the whole housing as an investment, if you will, that should go out the window, and then focus on doing like like bonds and such, where instead of like people investing in a house because they don't need to, because housing is like price fixed, if you will, or like a rent control almost. Um, you can make it such that instead of for investing in a house for a pension, they go like in state bonds, where those bonds that are used to jumpstart new industries. I think that has value, and then you can like continue to compete because you can have continuous influx from people investing, and yeah, it's relatively safe investment, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, that's way beyond my let's say pay grade. um,
Yes, there's a reason
but yeah,
I'm
that
not in charge
but
of the government.
no, but those are things that I would like be like, hey, like if we get to a point where, hey, housing again is only 25% of your salary, then it means that people free up money to then um, um, invest.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Definitely. I think
but yeah,
anything we can do to
for
make it
that,
a more,
something needs to happen.
I was just saying, I think anything we can do to make it a more equitable economy so it's not the, you know, 1%, doing well and the 99% struggling. I think anything we can do to make it more equitable is only a win.
Yes, yes, exactly. And we'll get there. I think in a way, this is a learning lesson for governments around the world about how far you can push people, and when they start pushing back. Um, and that I think there's going to be a lot of let's say government officials that are wondering like, okay, I think we've done all the pushing we can. We need to do something. Um, so, for instance, like an example here in the UK is that the benefit system, something called universal credit, um, what they pay out. If you have savings, for instance, then you can't qualify, one of them. But also one of the things is that the amount that you get is so low that you basically go from a job to yeah close to immediate destitution, that kind of thing. Um, which is one of those things where then you basically um, remove all the life juice, if you will, from somebody. While if it was a more gradual measure, if you will, then you have a better chance of people returning to normality, quote unquote. Um, but yeah, that all requires massive overhauls. So in a way, maybe that's why 2021 can work.
Yeah, I think that's a
But
great
yeah,
way
we'll
to
have to
think of
see.
it.
Yeah. But I think that's there's some skepticism and people go like, oh yeah, the World Economic Reform and the Great Reset, and we don't own anything anymore. But if you do read between the lines, you go like, well, if you do own something, but basically for you to own it, it means that A, you don't own it, but the bank owns it, and your mortgage payment, if you will, is so high, then is that actually doing anything for you?
Right.
Um, like you have to think about that, and that's why I think where your money coaching also comes in, where it's like, is it worth it to have this higher mortgage, or is it better to go like, hey, we move to a different state if your work allows that kind of thing, and then
Yeah, we all
basically be done with your mortgage 10 years earlier, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we all have such, every one of us has conflicting priorities. None of us can have everything exactly what we want. And yeah, so it really is about weighing, to use your example, do I value living in the city near my friends, near my job, near culture? Do I value that in terms of what it will actually financially cost? Is that a worthwhile trade off for me? Or would I rather, have that extra savings and then, change my lifestyle and be in a completely different location, different lifestyle. So we all have these things to weigh, and it's just about how do we put it all together into a cohesive picture.
Yes, and we'll get there.
Yeah,
I think we're all like rediscovering what we think is important, and yeah, have our priorities are changing, especially for that, not just because maybe people are going to change themselves, but they see other people are going to change and they go like, hey, you know what? Actually, do I need this, or or what, or is it what I need is actually different than what I'm doing, that kind of thing.
definitely, definitely.
Um, I think those are all my questions. I was going to say thank you for joining me on the podcast. Um, if Where can people find you?
Yeah, it was such a joy to be here. Thank you for having me. People can find me on my website, which is beyondmoney.co. So not .com, but beyondmoney.co. And I have a little gift for you on there of like 7 tips that all of us can do today to change our financial situations around. So you can download that on my website. And then you can also find me on Instagram, also at beyondmoney.co. So please come hang out with me.
Sounds good. Um, and I saw as well, being podcast host, I saw as well you have a podcast yourself.
I
Am I right?
don't. No, I don't have one. I like being guests on them,
Oh,
but
okay,
I
okay,
haven't.
okay. I
Yeah,
wasn't
so
sure. Yeah.
I've been guests on a bunch before,
Okay, okay.
but yeah.
Yeah. So and LinkedIn, you're on. People can find you on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. I assume.
They can find me on LinkedIn. I can't
Yeah.
say that I'm very active, but I'm on there also at
Yeah.
Beyond Money Co. So find me there. And yeah,
Okay.
Twitter.
Okay.
Maybe
Sounds
in
good.
2021, I'll
Sounds
start.
good.
I'll start tweeting. We'll see.
Yeah, social media is a whole different ballgame.
I know.
I believe
I
it
only
myself.
started my
Um,
Instagram in 2020, so it's been a fun learning for me.
yeah, yeah. I still have to figure Instagram out.
Yeah.
This is for B2B, it's slightly different where it's like,
Right.
are the people I'm talking to even there, that kind of thing. But they might be
Totally.
there. Thank you again, and thank you, dear listeners, wherever you are on the surfboard, in the ocean, in the ocean, on the beach somewhere, in Hawaii, on a cruise ship, maybe not, in the North Pole, wherever you are. If you're on a spaceship, do let me know. I can do a shout out. If you're on ISS, do wave. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in this episode. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I look forward to having you tune in again next episode. See you next time.